It's time now for the political analysis of Fromm and Fuller. Al Fromm, former political advisor to President Bill Clinton, and Craig Fuller, former political advisor to President Ronald Reagan and George H.W. Bush. Good morning, all. Al, I want to start with you. We did talk about a little bit last week about the kind of tug of war that's going on in the Republican Party. I think many people see this as kind of a national story, which it is, but it has a kind of an interesting role locally, both in the state. We have a governor who is now perceived as a moderate in the Republican Party, and we have a Trump conservative congressman in the first district on the Eastern Shore. And, I guess I'm just fascinated how this might play out locally. We're looking at Hogan perhaps pursuing the Republican nomination. We have Michael Steele, a well-known commentator and former lieutenant governor, looking at a role statewide. And we have, from what we can tell at the Spy, people who are interested in challenging Andy Harris within his party from the moderate side of the wing, as well as even some Democrats wanting to maybe switch parties to take on Andy Harris in their Republican primary. Anyway, it's a long way of saying, what's going on? What do you see here?
Well, first of all, let me start with my usual caveat. I'm not an expert on Republican politics, either nationally or in the state of Maryland. But I guess I don't really see the first district of Maryland becoming a battleground in the Civil War in the Republican Party, at least not as far as Governor Hogan is involved. I really don't see any interest that he might have in, or any reason that he might have to engage in it. He's in his second term as governor. This will be his last 2 years as governor. He's term limited, and his political future, from his perspective, I'm sure, is in national politics now, not in Maryland state politics. So getting bogged down in a primary race in a pretty obscure congressional district will only, in a sense, only retard his national interests. He probably doesn't want to spend his last 2 years as governor tied up with a primary challenge to Andy Harris, because for him it's really lose-lose. Even though Hogan's done very well in the first district in his gubernatorial candidates campaigns, Harris won 65% last time. In one of his early races, he took on a more moderate Republican primary incumbent in the primaries and beat him, even though he lost that race, but then won the seat later. So there's a chance that Hogan could lose that, and that surely wouldn't do him any good. But the truth is, even if he won, what would he gain from it? He had been bogged down in Maryland, and he'd sort of lost two years of the opportunity to be on the national scene. Now, if Hogan wants to change his party and catapult himself into the national race, I've got two ideas for him. First, he could go to CPAC or some kind of conservative organization like that, high-profile conservative organization, and deliver a message they don't want to hear. He could say, it's time for Republicans to stop the voter suppression campaign around the country, because we need to be a party of inclusion, not a party of exclusion. We've got to compete for new voters. We can't just try to prevent them from voting. Or second, you alluded to Michael Steele. Maybe he would want to pick a candidate to succeed him as governor, who would be sort of a groundbreaking candidate like Michael Steele, African American, and push him. That'd get a lot of national attention. And if he perhaps won, it really would get him a lot of attention. But either of those moves would sort of put him in the center of the debate for where the new party should go, and not get him sort of bogged down in the battles of Trump.
Hey, Craig, what's your thought on all this?
Well, I'll give you a little different take on it. I think that what we're really talking about is what's the path forward for Republicans, and we can't really know at this point. Hogan is certainly um, one path in the sense that you have a governor who's remained fairly popular, elected in obviously a statewide race that's a strong Democratic state. Uh, and so he's found a formula, and I think a lot of it has to do with his performance in office. He's governed as a competent governor. He's been forthright in public, and while certainly has gotten no free ride and has been challenged by the opposing party, he's come out pretty well. And as he looks to the future, one of the questions I think he should ponder is what could he do in these midterm elections to demonstrate he can help Republicans get elected, and his kind of Republicans. And in that on that note, our congressman in the first district of Maryland is not his kind of Republican. Andy Harris is every day either embarrassing us all or himself, or holding his ground as a total Trump supporter. Um, and if the Republican Party is shrinking, and I believe it is, Andy Harris is going to find that he has even less support than he had last time around. Now, it's a district carved out for a Republican, so a very strong and solid Democrat couldn't win, although he did win in Talbot County. And one of the things that you could do if you were Governor Hogan is look at races where your involvement could make a difference, either raising money, recruiting a good candidate, a Republican who would have a really solid chance of winning in November. And I'm pretty sure that those who look at races where Republicans could be challenged effectively have to be looking at the first district of Maryland, just because of the issues that Andy Harris has gotten himself involved in. And so there could be a formula where some time spent raising money, some time spent recruiting a solid candidate, somebody who knows the district, somebody who's seen as effective in public policy, could actually be to Hogan's benefit. At least that is a path forward. Whether it's a successful one for Hogan or a successful one for a challenger to Andy Harris, we can't know now. But I have a very hard time believing that Andy Harris is going to get an easy ride either in his primary, and should he win, he certainly won't get one in a general election.
Craig, staying with you, and speaking of policy, maybe you and Al noticed this in the New York Times yesterday, but there was a lead editorial by the paper that was extremely complimentary of Mitt Romney's proposal for child allowance redistribution. And boy, it just kind of reminded me of the good old days where, Republicans actually were bringing a lot of thoughtful ideas to the table. Do you feel like some of this could really pull back some of those moderate Democrats that have been worried about the Trump years and bring them back to the party?
I'm going to stay with my same theme in the sense of I think we're a party searching for different ways forward. I've been a Romney supporter for many years. I have a high regard for him. I think he was a very effective, very innovative governor. This is a businessman out of Bain Capital who helped companies succeed. He looked at solutions for the state of Massachusetts that many conservative Republicans later recoiled from. But the point is, Mitt Romney is a problem solver. And so he looks at challenges and issues, and he puts very smart people together, and together they come up with solutions. So who would have thought? I saw the headline, the Romney family plan sees the true value of parenting. The fact that we have a leading Republican with a family plan, the fact that it talks about parenting, the fact that it has support for families unconditionally, all good things. Another headline talked about how Biden should borrow from the Romney plan. So one path forward for Republicans is the path Romney's on, which is do the work, develop legislation, use that as an opening to engage in negotiations with the other party and with your own members of your own party. Of course, some conservatives already come out against the plan. I wish that Romney was a better messenger, in the sense that when he's run for office at the national level, it hasn't worked out. But it doesn't mean that he's not going to be an effective message carrier as we go forward. I'd take just a minute on another case, which is Mike Pence. It's easy to maybe write him off, but Mike Pence is meeting with Republicans, talking about working with them to help get elected, or to help get more Republicans elected in the House and Senate. And as a former vice president, he's got the ability to raise money. He's got the ability to draw crowds. He is actually, right now anyway, seems like focused less on policy than Romney. He's focused on helping Republicans get elected. And I assure you that he'll find Republicans who are only too happy to take that kind of help if it brings money, crowds, and voters out to the polls come 2022.
Al, is this a new way forward for the Republicans?
I'm delighted that Senator Romney has come up with a good idea. He's a smart man. He came up with good ideas on healthcare. And President Obama supported them, became Obamacare to a large degree. And Governor Romney, when he ran for president, had to oppose them because of his party. So I'm delighted that he's come up with this idea. I hope it is considered in, either the COVID bill or some of the other legislation that comes out this year. But if it's going to be considered, it's probably going to be considered by Democrats and not by Republicans. And that's his problem. I doubt there's very much interest in it in the GOP. Look, having a good idea agenda is an important path for the Republicans coming back. They didn't even have a platform in their last convention. They're a party of Donald Trump right now, as sad as that might be. I was looking at the history just a few minutes ago of the Know Nothing Party, which I know too little about. But that seems to me to have a lot of parallels, the Know Nothings in the 1850s to where the Republicans are right now. It was an anti-immigrant party. Probably, if it had gotten elected, it would have been, anti-Black, anti-Catholic, anti-immigrant, anti-everything. It enjoyed some success in the 1850s for a little while, but not for very long. Look, the Republican Party simply right now is too far out of the American mainstream. It's dominated by Trump. We'll see that again at the CPAC convention this weekend. It still supports Marjorie Taylor Greene more than Liz Cheney or Mitt Romney. Just look at what the state parties have done in censuring moderate Republicans. Its main strategy all over the country is voter suppression. And having said all that, it doesn't mean it can't win back the Congress, because history is on its side for winning in 2022. But I really believe that ultimately, until the Republican Party does what Ronald Reagan did and redefine it in a positive way, its success is going to depend more on Democrats than it is on what they do. And here are two ways. One, Democratic prosecutors in Fulton County, Georgia, and in Manhattan could do what the Republicans have been afraid to do and get rid of Trump. And that would be a big boost to the Republican scaredy cats all around the country. And the second thing is Democrats have a left wing that could drive our party out of the mainstream to the left. That's why the Republicans picked up a lot of seats in the 2020 election, despite Trump, suburban seats. And, if Trump is knocked off the scene because of his own legal or financial problems, then and the Democratic Party moves too far to the left, there'll be a real opportunity for the Republicans to recapture the rest of the suburban seats they lost in 2018 and win the House back. But for their long-term viability as a long-term party building a majority, they have to come up with an agenda that is good for the country and that the American people want to support.
We'll let that be the last word. Greg Fuller, Al Fromm, thanks a lot. Have a good weekend.